Three, two.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to the weekly media briefing and public health update with Montgomery County Executive Marc Elrich. I'm Lorna Virgili, Hispanic Public Information Officer, and joining us today is Dr. James Bridgers, Acting Director of the Department of Health and Human Services, as well as Mr. Sean O'Donnell, Program Administrator, Public Health, Emergency Preparedness and Response, also for the Department of Health and Human Services. Dr. Earl Stoddard, Assistant Chief Administrative Officer. And today we have three special guests. Assistant Chief Darren Frack from the Montgomery County Police Department, as well as Commander Amy Dom and Captain Michael Pratt. They will be talking about the 30 in 30 initiative to increase the percentage of women employed by MCPD. Members of the media, we're going to use raising the hand today for the Q&A portion of this presentation, and a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. And with that, I toss it to you, Mr. County Executive. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. So this week, I want to highlight an initiative in Montgomery County to bring more women into policing. We're about to begin a new public safety academy class to fill vacancies on the force. You know, we all know that vacancies in the police department have been a major concern. And as we concentrate on increasing public safety, it's equally important that we diversify our police force so it reflects the community that it serves. As far back as 2010, more women earned college degrees than men. It's the same for doctorates, and 3 out of every 5 master's degrees went to women. At the same time, women accounted for just 12% of police departments nationwide. Fast forward today, and not much has changed. The national average for women in policing is still about 13%. The percentage is even smaller when you consider how many women hold leadership roles. In Montgomery County, we're proud to be above the national average of women in policing at 23%, but we can do better, and that's what our plan is. We're joining a national effort of 30 by 30. 30% female representation in our police force by 2030. This is not a terminal goal. This is a step along the way, and we hope we can increase the force to 30% by 2030, but that's not going to be a stopping point, and we'll continue to try to add more females to the force until hopefully we eventually achieve parity. Attendees at the National Institute of Justice Summit that was held 5 years ago told researchers that when women representation in law enforcement does not mirror the population, their proportion of the population, it can create a problem of trust. Attendees suggested that change was most likely to occur and be sustained if it was mandated by a mayor, governor, the federal government, or other political drivers outside of police organizations. In other words, change usually doesn't happen on its own. For more on our efforts to recruit and retain more women in the years to come, I'd like to invite Assistant Chief Darren Frank, Commander Amy Dom, and Captain Michael Pratt from the Montgomery County Police Department to talk a little bit about 30 by 30 initiative. But first, I'm going to let our Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, Earl Stoddard, kick off this part of the program. So Earl, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. I did want to highlight a few things. So obviously the council did finally did pass the budget and did include the contract agreement we reached with FOP Lodge 35. And part of attracting more women into law enforcement is making sure that they have the benefits and we can be more selective and be able to recruit more women into the field, just like any other officer. And so obviously that package did include both a recruitment bonus, which we've talked about, of $20,000, but also includes significant over multiple years stepwise increases that total out to about 10.5% wage increases, and also a one-time retention bonus in 2024, also to sustain more of our officers. It also includes an additional retirement benefit, which allows them to get to 65% after 25 years to allow for that retention as well. And so I wanted to, before Assistant Chief Frank and Commander Dom and Captain Pratt talk a little bit more about the initiatives, I want to say, it is incredibly important that we have a police force that looks like our residents. And we need to do that both in terms of gender, but also in terms of diversity of race, ethnicity, religious background across the board, because obviously people who know their community and look like their community are more effective at policing their community. And so we want people to be able to afford to live in Montgomery County and police in Montgomery County. And in order to do that, we have to be competitive with both our wages, benefits, and have to have a program that's progressive and trains our officers, offers them forward advancement opportunities and everything that they are looking for in a career. We know that we need to continue to make changes within our department and within our government that allows for families and women to feel supported, make sure that we have the right environment of leave policies and the like. But I think this is a step in the right direction. As the county executive alluded to, this is a commitment to go to 30% by 2030, but then continue on beyond that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Assistant Chief Frank.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Thank you, Dr. Stoddard. I just want to fine tune a couple different things and our thoughts on it within the department. Yeah, I had an opportunity a year ago to go to some outstanding leadership and diversity training, and the 30 by 30 was brought into the fold, and we immediately went to work on bringing it to Montgomery County. And it's not as simple as just saying we're going to do it. We have to pledge to do it. We have to go through a process. And we were very, very excited when we were accepted into, unfortunately, what is not as many police agencies as we want to be involved. We're one of a handful in the DMV that has signed on to the 30 by 30 pledge. But it's just a really good program that also goes that will help us in our recruiting efforts. But it goes to our hearts about what we want to be as a police department. You know, I'm a father to 3 young women. My wife was a executive and had many conversations about the challenges she faced in the private sector, and to be able to do something in law enforcement, in government, to break away those glass ceilings, if you would, to give more opportunity and be more understanding and really give better service to our community. You know, across the nation, the women are 51% of the population, and we want to continue to reflect our community. I have the privilege of being part of the Reimagining Public Safety effort, and this definitely goes in line with what we're trying to accomplish there in serving our community. We have much more work to do. Captain Pratt has many ideas as he goes about his efforts for our base recruiting efforts, but the county as a whole, with our leave policies with FMLA, it's a very welcoming environment for women in policing. I'm very, very pleased to say that our last class that graduated, we out of the 28 that we hired, 48% of them, 14 of them were women. And that's a tremendous step. And I think it goes to show our dedication to not looking at race, not looking at sex, not looking at religion, but finding the best people that can serve their community. Again, as the county executive noted, 20% of our executive leadership is represented by women, and it gives such a fantastic perspective to us in law enforcement, and we need more of it. We need to keep driving on. As Dr. Stoddard said, we are not going to, it's not get to 30 and relent. We don't have any goals other than to be the best we can, and to do that we have to be inclusive, we have to be diverse. We have more work to do, but citizens should be proud of their community, or the community should be proud of their police. Right now we have a 40% diversity rate when you look at our department, when you count women, when you count race. It's for our sworn complement, and actually in our professional staff, which again helps us a great deal. We've achieved a 78% diversity rate when you look across the board at the people that we're employing here. It gives us a tremendous a view into other people's lives and allow us to serve better. I want to pass it over to Captain Pratt, who's just going to talk briefly about the few things that we are doing as part of this 30 by 30 pledge that we hope will help us gain on that 30% and surpass that 30% sooner than 2030. Captain Pratt.
Thank you, Assistant Chief, and thank you, County Executive, for having me here. Again, my name is Mike Pratt. I am actually a newly promoted captain, and I am in charge of recruiting all of our employees for the police department. As far as our 30 for 30 goes, it's important to kind of understand how we actually get there. There are some bedrock foundation that we are building on, that the Assistant Chief and myself and Commander Dom are building on. And it starts with affirming zero tolerance for discriminatory practices. That is sung from the mountaintops on our police department, but it starts there. We are formally making hiring and retaining, promoting qualified women a strategic priority for our police department as part of this pledge. A lot of the things that we can do and that I can do as a recruiter outside of what my normal scope is for all officers, and specifically attempting to hire professional women for our job, is by utilizing women-specific messaging in how we recruit. Targeted messaging, that could be as simple as kind of what the county executive put up there. Pictures of a department showing female officers who are there, who are out in the community. We love to highlight case closures for our female detectives. Things like that that really impact our community. That's the type of messaging that we're now moving forward and putting out. One of the other things we will do is we will provide information about all of our department policies and practices that promote that work life. As the Assistant Chief mentioned, parental leave, FMLA, as everybody on this call is aware, the county has, our entire lactation policy, lactation rooms. For FOP members and for all of our police officers, we have what's called a job share program. We are one of the only departments in the nation that has that, whereby if you are a parent or if you have childcare needs, if you have home care needs, you actually can find another partner to partner up with, and each of you will split a 40-hour work week. So if I have childcare needs at home, I will only have to work a 20-hour work week, and then my partner will fill in and work the other 20 hours for me. Article 63 in our collective bargaining agreement with the FOP, it specifically addresses family and childcare needs. So that's the important thing that we really want to get out there to women, not only in our department, but also out in the community, that listen, this is what we do here as a police department, and this is what we will continually do. And finally, it's the small things, even just having uniforms that those females on the call know. My uniform fits completely different if somebody else were to try to put it on. Just having uniforms that are made and tailored for females are the little small steps that we as a department have taken to really assist us in recruiting and, more importantly, retention of our professional female staff and female officers. So with that, I will answer questions later, but let me turn it over to Commander Dom to really give you some insight and address what we're doing.
Thanks, Captain Pratt, and thanks everyone for having me today. I'm Commander Amy Dahm. I am the commander of our second district, which is Bethesda. I've been with Montgomery County Police since February of 2003. And when we talk about women in policing, I think it's important that we consider why it's so important beyond just reflecting the diversity of our communities. Women have shown to be less likely to be involved in uses of force. Women are less likely to be the subject of complaints, and women are more likely to achieve better outcomes for survivors of sexual violence and intimate partner violence. But before we just talk about women in policing, I want to talk about women and femininity generally for just a moment. Back in the late 1890s, there was a syndrome called bicycle face. And doctors wrote that bicycles presented a unique threat that impacted women more than men. And they warned women specifically that bicycling may inflict an expression of weariness and encouraged women to avoid riding them. Of course, bicycles presented a societal problem, right? Women were suddenly more mobile. They were able to move more freely about their communities, and suffragettes were suddenly able to go town to town to organize in order to gain momentum for the women's right to vote. Some of these women even wore pants. It wasn't until 1897 that Dr. Sarah Hackett Stevenson debunked the bicycle face and encouraged women to go out and ride. Going back to voting, though, geese were still federally protected before women gained the right to vote. But this is just one illustration of some of the ways that women have been questioned for challenging some of our normative gender values here in America for several generations. Policing specifically, the first female police officer was Alice Stebbins Wells. She was a police officer in LA in 1901, and police officers, police women came to Montgomery County in the early 1970s. One of the reasons I think that women shy away a little bit from policing is because they think of it as a very masculine profession. When we look at the ways that policing has been portrayed for generations, whether it's on TV or in our communities, you might think back to TV shows like Miami Vice, things that romanticize the idea of police chases and assaults and all these other types of things. But I've been a cop for 20 years, and more of my days are talking to people, collaborating with individuals and stakeholders in our community, and mediating differences and disputes between parties than they are anything else. This talking, this collaborating that happens more often than fighting and assaults, the more that we highlight the roles that women can play and often do play in policing. And although we have to be ready to take care of any of that type of traditional policing business, it's certainly an important part of policing. But the more that we can expand the understanding that that's really not what an everyday police officer's life is like here in Montgomery County, I think the more women we can get interested in coming into this profession. When we think about policing, it remains a reflection of traditionally male gendered roles that femininity is kind of in direct opposition to when you talk about the way that we think about masculinity and femininity in American society. But modern policing values collaboration, it values partnership, it values mediation, all traits that women display in spades. When I joined the department, I was 22 years old, I was 5 foot tall, and I weighed 88 pounds. If I can do this job, anyone out there can do this job. And I've done it for more than 20 years. So can you. I'm asking for other women to refuse to accept the limitations, to defy expectations, and I'm thrilled that MCP is joining the 30 by 30 initiative. I can't wait to meet a new generation of women in policing.
Thank you very much, Commander Amy Daum, as well as Assistant Chief Frankel and Captain Pratt. Members of the media, we're going to open the Q&A portion of this presentation. Questions regarding the 30 in 30 initiative to increase the percentage of women employed by MCPD. Tom Fitzgerald, I did see that you had your hand up since get-go. It's a question or questions related to the 30 in 30 initiative or something else?
Gotcha. I actually do want to ask about policing and recruiting. The county executive, later this afternoon, the governor is going to be in Wheaton, touring the area, talking about pedestrian safety, economic development. This kind of goes hand in hand with maybe the late night safety plan that you signed the other day. How difficult is it for redevelopment to move forward if you do not have an inherent sense of safety amongst the people that you want to go to those areas? Is there any linkage between these two issues, and how important is it for you to get the public safety angle of it right before you can get the economic redevelopment part right?
So, from my perspective, you have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. So we're not waiting to solve every problem we have on the social front in terms of driving ahead with what we can do with economic development. And I think we can make a pretty good case that we're still basically a pretty safe place to be. The problems that we're facing are problems that everybody's facing. You'd be hard put to find the nirvana any place out there in the country right now. But we're taking this seriously, and I think what people want to see is we're taking this seriously. So we're dealing with the safety issues, and we're also telling people this is a good place to come live and work and to open your businesses. And we're going to keep doing that.
And if I could just follow up on a recruiting question, previously, and we talked about this in the past, that Montgomery County Police were having trouble filling positions, and you had open positions because of a number of situations, salary, morale. I know you're launching this new effort to get women to be police officers in Montgomery County, but as a whole, how are you doing on that front of bringing new officers onto the force?
Would like to answer that question?
I can start.
I can.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Assistant Chief Frank. We got a class starting tomorrow, which is a good
All
sign.
right.
There
Yeah,
you
we have a class starting next week, and we have the potential of 25 officers joining that class. And so I'll say this: the county executive has gone all in on getting on all fronts, as far as the support, as far as bonuses, as far as pay. And that all played out in the latest contracts that were approved by county council. And those are all things that are going to help us fill these classes. I will say that the bonus has been a tremendous advantage for us, because we can now compete with other police departments. We actually have a large number of lateral officers from other departments that want to come work for Montgomery County, and that $20,000 bonus is the last thing that kind of put them over the edge to do that. So we're still turning the ship on recruiting and hiring, and it's a much bigger conversation than just money. I think when you look at what the youth today want to see in their police and want to be a part of, it's different from when I started. It's different when Commander Dom started. They want to see an agency that's diverse, that cares, that's ethical, and that it's thoughtful in what they're doing and going about policing. And between the reimagining efforts that we have going on here, upwards of 300 items that we've implemented from 3 different buckets, whether it be the Police Accountability Act, the reimagining public safety, and also the ELE 4A audit that was completed at the direction of the county executive and Chief Jones. We are doing the things that people want to be a part of in policing going forward. So we still have a lot of work to do that we're going to continue to do. But I will tell you, the position that I feel, I've been in this assistant chief job for 2 years now, and over the last 8 months, I've seen this ship turning, and we are just thrilled with where we are now as compared to where we were. And going to, and the last point I'll give you that you sort of had asked the county executive about, we're looking at leveraging technology as well into these areas where we're looking to develop. And the fact is, we have some great programs going on. We have mobile cameras. We are going to get the county executive supported us with the drones as first responders, a very front thinking technological solution to assist in de-escalation, to assist in responding to crime. We're going to continue our efforts to speak with the public. As you saw from county council, they asked that we go to the public and ask them on their feelings for it. So we're ready to do that. We're going to go speak with the stakeholders down in places like downtown Silver Spring, and we're going to continue to find ways to make policing more efficient and safer to go along with that. So I just want to say we've got a lot of things that we are cooking, and it's all through the support of Dr. Stoddard and the county executive.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom Fitzgerald, Fox 5 DC. Next, Kate Ryan, WTOP. Questions on the 30 and 30 initiative.
Thank you very much. First, I just want to preface this with, I'm sorry for the loss of your former colleague, Luther Reynolds. I know of his work in the department. Commander Dom, I have a question for you specifically. You've been around for 20 years. Are you seeing changes that you had wished were in place when you first joined? And when you speak to women who are considering coming onto the force, what are some of the first things they want to know about being an officer in your department, specifically as a woman?
Kate, those are great questions. And, you know, I speak a lot to my mentors who were women who came before me, and I am so grateful for the road that they laid down so that I can do the things that I can do. And I certainly see a difference from their generation to my generation as far as acceptance. You know, we talk a lot about having a seat at the table, right? But the reality is we need to make the table a little bit bigger so we can get more perspectives and more different points of view, right? Because each one of these things really does impact the organization as it moves forward. So I do think that there has been change. I think that it is more, you know, there's a lot of talk about when a man walks into a room, he is assumed to be competent while a woman has to prove that, right? And we see that play out regardless of type of organization or type of job that a woman chooses to take on. And I think that I've definitely seen that change here in the organization over the course of the last 20 years. And speaking with my female counterparts nationwide, they're feeling the same thing. So I think that that's an exciting first step. And most of the time when I talk to women about policing, they're concerned about the really physical aspects of it. And I'm not going to lie, there are situations where absolutely you do have to use physical force to counteract some type of struggle. But the majority of the time, you can mediate or discuss or de-escalate many situations. And women really bring that skill to the table. We're great collaborators. We can talk to people, de-escalate in a different way. And, you know, I've been on scenes, my last job was as the director of special victims. And especially when you have women helping other women who have been survivors or victims of this type of crime, it makes an enormous difference in our community when we are able to show up for each other.
Interesting. How about advancement? I mean, I'm old enough to have been around when you had Chief Merling as the chief of the department, and gentlemen too. You know, I'll put her on the spot a little bit. Are there still things in which you have to say to your fellow officers, "Hey guys, there's some things you're not getting"?
Yes. And Assistant Chief Frank and Captain Pratt know me pretty well, right? I definitely do not hesitate. And I tell other women, it's really important that we are providing that perspective and not shrinking into the background. So I think as we gain more and more traction, as there's more and more women, I think that more people will become comfortable in doing it. But I do want to talk briefly about promotion, because one of the things that holds people back is, you know, women are generally primary caretakers, right? Whether it's for aging adults or it's for children. And I'm not saying that men don't have these similar responsibilities, but the majority of the time it does fall to the woman in the household. And as we begin to create more policies that are more friendly, family friendly, which the department has done a great job in doing. And I think that that helps women take promotions and consider an executive track or a promotion track a little bit more than they would have even 10 or 15 years ago. And of course, it helps to see other women doing it and succeeding and doing well.
Gotcha. And last question, because I know there's a line here of folks, but how does Montgomery County stack up compared to other jurisdictions in terms of the number of women who are in the department? And what's the competition like?
Well, the competition is steep, right? We know that. And I do want to thank the county executive because he's done a really good job making Montgomery County a better police department to work, right? Whether it's through increased salary or signing and hiring bonuses. And I think that Chief Frank, you had the exact numbers, but we stack up pretty well when we talk about national averages in policing. We're a little bit higher than the national averages. Chief Frank, did you have those numbers?
Yeah, we're way ahead on the national average. So the national average, we're at 23%. And I'm sorry, Montgomery County is at 23% for their sworn officers, while the national average is 12%. So we're ahead, not where we want to be, but we're ahead.
Got it. Listen, thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kate. Jeannie Bixby, Local 360. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I have a question that anybody representing the force today can answer, but you know, there's a lot of concerns about attrition within the police department. And I guess especially when it comes to women, what are you all looking to do, not only to recruit women to also, but also to retain women and make them want to stay on the force here in Montgomery County?
So I guess I'll start, and I can throw it to Commander Dahm if she has anything more to, or Captain Pratt if he has anything more to add. So first, the number one thing that of most recently is the contract. In addition to the hiring bonuses, there are other elements of that contract that help us to retain people. And that was one of the goals that we had, is not only doing the recruiting, getting more competitive at recruiting, but also retaining the people we have currently. One of the great things about Montgomery County is its size, the size of the department. There are many opportunities to work in different fields, whether you can be a special victims detective, you can be a traffic officer, you can be, a decentralized drone pilot, you can be a canine officer. All of those are open to anyone. It doesn't matter their background. And I think that gives people, when they come to see us, both as women or just any candidates, they see this choice that they can have once they get into patrol. And what we do see a lot when we have this younger generation of officers come in, they want to know right away when they can be a detective. So that's one of the nice things about Montgomery County, that we kind of discuss a great deal about the choice that you can have. You can be a patrol officer and be an excellent patrol officer for your entire career, or you can go on and do something that you saw one day, whatever it was that inspired you to become a police officer. So to include promotional opportunities to become leadership and to lead the officers here. So I'll throw it to Captain Dahm or Commander Dahm if she wants to add anything more there.
So one of the things, building on that I think that AC Frank really brought up, the size of the department allows us to take advantage of opportunities that we wouldn't necessarily have working on a smaller department. I have many women who work for me here in the Bethesda district, and they choose to either take the job share opportunity, right, where like Captain Pratt was talking about, where you can work 2 days, the other officer works 2 days. And the Article 63 childcare, where we talk about the flexibility of scheduling, I do have an officer here who's taking advantage of that. She's made very clear, if I couldn't do this, I would have to leave. So these are things that the department has really taken in consideration when building an organization that wants to keep people here. We want you, if it's in your heart to continue to serve, we want you to stay here with us.
I guess as a follow-up, Commander Dahm, you talked about coming in, you said 20 years ago, and how things have improved. Is there anything that you think I can't imagine it's pretty challenging to come into a male-dominated field. You have to have some guts, and that is going to be something that scares people a little from coming in. They might not want to, I don't want to use the word fight, but face that challenge every day. Do you think that there's things within the workplace, not just in terms of attracting women to seeing that this is an option for them, but also things that could be done within the department to just make it easier, and for women who are in the force, not make it all the time about the fact that I'm trying to certainly to phrase this, but I guess making it easier so their gender isn't something they're constantly having to think about being in a room full of men and addressing those challenges?
That's a great question. And let me talk about a couple of things that we do now and some things that we are working towards doing. So when we talk about that hiring phase, we are doing open houses at our academy during the hiring phase and before the hiring phase, so we can have conversations with people to kind of change their perception of what policing is really about. We do pre-hire calls where we can talk to all of our pre-hires about, this is the reality of the job. But when we talk about policing specifically, it has to be a conversation like many of the conversations we've had surrounding policing about what it really is to do this job day in and day out, right? I touched a little bit. I could talk about this for hours, but I'll keep it kind of simple. When we talk about challenging what we see as masculinity versus femininity, that's a complete societal issue, right? Like we have to have these conversations really in America as a society. What do we believe about these things? And we could talk about that all day long. But when we start to gender a profession, and I think that policing has really been a gendered profession, right? You have to be brave as a woman to walk in and say, I'm willing to question that, just to walk in the door. And then to continue to do that every day. It's something that's questioned both internally inside the organization and outside the organization. I've had many opportunities, especially as a young supervisor, when I would be called to the scene and people would demand to speak to the supervisor, and they were still shocked to see, oh, that's me, right? I am the supervisor. So it's not really just an internal organizational problem. There's an external conversation that needs to be had as well.
So I have to do this. I have to point out, Commander Dom, here's a real life example of what we're doing here. We were in a training the other week and the floor was open, and Commander Dom threw out a challenge during that training. And I will tell you, I loved it for a couple of reasons, because she had the courage to throw out this challenge and to throw out these observations of what she was seeing. But she did it from a different perspective, the perspective of a woman commander, and all of her vast experience. And it engaged an entire discussion. And when you're able to do that in an organization and you have open discussions and you allow those conversations to take place, you start breaking down those masculine, feminine walls and just showing everyone as equals. So I love that play that we had the other week. I don't think I told you that, Commander Dom, but I love that kind of conversation and that kind of challenge, because that sets up observational learning for everyone else, so that maybe there is a male there that isn't quite feeling like women can do this job. When they see competency like that, and then see the kind of inspirational thinking that comes out of that, that's what wins hearts and minds. And that's what we're trying to do here in Montgomery County.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Up next, Judy Hertz, the Greater Olney News. Good afternoon, Judy.
Good afternoon, and this can be addressed by anyone. And it's a similar question to what has just been asked, but as the editor of the Gazette for a long time, I had many conversations with Chief Merriling about women in the police force. And she had hoped that when she became chief in 1995, that would open the floodgates and that things would change swiftly and drastically. Why has it taken 28 years to get to this point to say, rah, rah, we're going to have, 30 by 30? You just addressed some of it, and I realize some of it is societal perhaps, and there are other reasons, but 28 years is a long time to pretend or act like this is a new thing.
So I would agree. I came on under Chief Merling. I think the thing that's changed, first of all, I think people meant to do what Chief Merling wanted, right? They wanted to get there, but maybe not 100% effort. Maybe not, they didn't know quite how to do it. Maybe also when you look at, I will say this, when we talk about it all the time, just the technology, social media, things have changed in the world. There were things that didn't exist back when I started and when Chief Merling was here that has helped change the world. And specifically, we're at a time in policing, we're reimagining, right? We're reimagining what our community wants of us. We're reimagining expectations that stood for decades of how the police should be. This is the best time of all to have this discussion, because we're really knocking down all kinds of walls, and doing it now. I think we have the momentum off a lot of other efforts, at inclusion and listening to our community. I think we're listening harder now more than ever. And it's the right time. Sometimes you just have to have that moment where it's the right time. And between all these influences over the last few years, I think that's why it's come up. The 30 by 30 movement, shockingly only started in 2018. And thankfully, a chief out of, I want to say chief out of New Jersey got with the NIJ with a woman there to start this program and really take it seriously. So, right, shocking. It took until 2018 to really start talking about it, but the time is right for it now. And we're going to drive ahead and keep going with our efforts. I don't know if Commander Dom has anything more she wants to add to that.
So, and I was never able to meet our lone female police chief, Carol Merling. And I think that from all the stories that I've heard about her, she sounds like an incredible woman. And I think that Chief Frank hit the nail on the head when he talks about timing. When you look at the timing of policing in the mid-90s, how much things have changed, I think that all of these conditions have to be in place first. And it's larger than just policing, right? When we talk about women in organizations and the changes that just need to take place, I think we're looking at that across many organizations. But again, I'm thrilled that we're taking advantage of the 30 by 30 initiative, and we are getting ourselves in front of this conversation. And I'm excited to see the new generation as we begin to recruit them.
And
Thank you very
I
much.
just want to add one piece of this, and I think it's important to recognize the timeframes that we're talking about. The mid-90s is when one of the last large surges in hiring happened, and those are many of the officers who today are going into retirement, and they're the officers who we're down these officers. Now we have this massive opportunity with this hiring that we are doing, refilling our ranks and wanting to overfill classes if we can, to really correct some things that were part of Chief Merling's vision that are now we have a greater opportunity. Given the vacancies, we have to correct some of these systemic challenges that have led us to where we are. And we should recognize that we are 10% above the national average. I'm not saying that is good, but I think we have work to do. We're further along the road than many of the other people who are joining on to the initiative are, but we're committed to improving beyond the 30.
Thank you. Thank you, Judy. Kate Ryan, do you have a follow-up question on the 30 and 30 initiative? Your hand's up, Kate. Okay,
There
yes
we go.
not.
You got me? No, you got me?
Yes, you have a follow-up?
Yes,
Okay.
Given what Assistant Chief Frank said about this powerful interaction, I'd love to hear more about that. Can you explain what challenge that Commander Dom laid down? Because it sounds like it was very meaningful.
The experience was meaningful. The challenge was one of the ones that we're talking about right now. Actually, it goes along with this. We were talking about the problem we have in attrition and what we're going to do as a department to move resources around and meet service demands at different hours and in different districts. Different districts have different needs. And we were also talking about a concept in policing called stratified policing. And so the conversation came around to is, well, you're telling us this is great, but how do we do this when I have officers that are running from call to call? And the perception is that we're short of officers. It's easy to sit in a class like that and not say anything and just kind of go through the motions. But again, for Commander Dom, she brought her experience as a new commander, what she's observing in her district, and saying, and really, it wasn't meant for I don't know what her motivations was, but the question was really actually more directed at me and other executives in there about what are we going to do? We need to think through this. I think it was geared towards all the executives. What are we going to really think through to fix these problems, and what are we going to do? And I would tell you, so from my experience of being on 27 years, that conversation didn't take place with a chief in the room or an assistant chief. It just didn't happen. They went through the motions. So we're trying to ignite that energy there. And I think Amy Dom, with her tenacity and also with her perspective as a woman, brought it to the forefront. And we want to keep, doesn't matter if it was Amy Dawn, but any of our leadership, we want to keep having that discussion.
Got it. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you, Kate. I do not see any more hands for questions for the Assistant Chief, or Commander and Captain. Members of the media, going once, twice. All right, thank you, Assistant Chief Frank, Commander Dom, and Captain Pratt for joining us this afternoon. We're going to move forward with the rest of the media briefing and the public health update. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you all for being on here. And I was really impressed by the discussions. I'm going to go off script and suggest I really want to preserve the video of this segment. And I think you guys ought to think about this as a recruitment tool. It ought to be on our page, not just the police page, but the county page, because I think your discussion was kind of pretty frank and honest about, what's happening and the role of women in the department and just policing in general. And, talk about conversations we don't normally have. This is not a conversation we normally have. And I appreciate the fact that you would, Commander Dom, ask a question about what are we going to do, because that's something I've been trying to encourage everybody to feel free to do, of their managers, to be able to say, we've got a problem or these are issues. How are we going to deal with it? Rather than just assuming that somebody's dealing with it or we're just going to keep doing things the way we do them. You can't change and you can't make progress if you can't look at the situation and say, we got an issue here. How do we move forward? So I appreciate everything all of you said. And I think that your words in particular to be powerful into a high school audience or a college audience of women, to let them see the kind of human side of what goes on in the department. And I just want to thank you for your willingness to be that open and people would say vulnerable, I guess, in terms of discussing it that way. So I was very impressed. I just want to add that. And I might as well say it in front of the press instead of a room where nobody else is around. So meanwhile, back at the briefing, I was just going to say, research shows that diverse workforces are effective. I think you all saw an example of that today. And so I look forward to as we move forward. And to the question about why are we talking about this now? I think the fact that the county's at 23% indicates there's been intentionality in the county to make this change. You can't reverse percentages in a workforce overnight when you've got people who have filled out the force and they're there 5, 10, 20 years. There are only X number of vacancies that come out. But the fact we've gotten to 23 and the fact that we're targeting 30, like I said in the beginning, it's a target for 2030 and we get there earlier. We just drive to targets beyond 30. But this is a way of saying we're part of and recognizing there's a national movement to accomplish that. And that's worth recognizing, that there's a national movement to accomplish that. We'll just get there first. That's my goal. So other things that are exciting. So I want to talk a little bit about the 2023 NACO, National Association of Counties Award winners. Montgomery County had a rather remarkable performance. We've been constantly working to be innovative and equitable and transparent around here, and our efforts have been recognized in this year's NACO Awards. NACO, which is the National Association of Counties, represents county governments in the United States, and their annual awards represent national recognition for work done by county employees and departments. This year, our county award winners range from programs for mentors to educational materials developed by the county to help during an emergency. The county also is awarded for digitizing records for contract workers and developing a county telework program, which I will say was rather remarkable, the way this county pivoted from in-person work to telework in the middle of a pandemic. We did not run around like chickens with our heads cut off and wondering what we were going to do. We found a way to transform to telework in a way we'd never done before. We have a holiday coaster campaign to deter drunk driving, and it has information on the coasters telling you who to call to get a ride back. And we are We're also we have an information center to help law enforcement fight violent crimes that won both won criminal justice and public safety awards. We have a customer engagement analysis to help our liquor license holders in the hospitality industry, and we have a residential deck program for homeowners that won recognition in community and economic development. And the deck program is really important because, we're offering to help people make sure their decks are safe. We all know that decks are supposed to be permitted. We all know that Home Depot is filled every weekend with people buying pressure treated lumber of the size you're using for a deck. And most of them don't have licenses. That is the reality. So our willingness to go out and help people to make sure their decks are safe is really important. At the end of the day, most important thing is whoever the deck got built, that it's built as a safe deck. And I want to thank our department for doing that. Customer engagement analysis helps our license holders in the hospitality industry. Department of Transportation has a Paint the Plow Truck Day contest for students, and we have a campaign by the Department of Permitting Services to educate the public about special events permitting. All these things won awards. And finally, fun and education. Montgomery County were singled out by NACO judges for the Summer Reading Challenge, hosted by our libraries and the Holiday Park Senior Center outdoor fitness programs, which won a Best in Category award. I want to thank all the winners who showed judges on a national level how Montgomery County goes above and beyond for its residents. And since I first became county executive, the county's collected more than 175 NACO awards for its outstanding community service programs and educational efforts. I want to thank the folks in all of these departments who do this work and engage their employees in a way that leads them to producing new and exciting ways that actually help improve our communications with the community. And speaking of educational efforts, on Memorial Day, I went to the Button Farm Living History Center to commemorate Harriet Tubman and the Journey to Freedom today. And I'm standing next to the statue in this picture, which was actually really remarkable. The picture doesn't do justice to the statue. And, it's hard to get, a person in the picture and the kind of the facial shots, but I was kind of blown away by the intensity of the expressions in Harriet Tubman's face and in the face of the young girl who's holding on to her finger in this picture. It is really a remarkable statue, and it really has an intensity to it that's just hard to describe. It's been on display there for the last 2 months, and remembering who she was and what she did is a crucial part of our history. And I want to thank Button Farm, the Monera Foundation, Heritage Montgomery, and Montgomery History, and our Office of Human Rights for having this event. We're seeing too many places across this country that are putting restrictions in place on teaching history, banning books to appease those who are afraid of facing painful and disturbing truths about our past. And hiding the truth and keeping people ignorant, which is what they're doing, of this country's past is not a path toward progress and understanding that's necessary if we're going to build stronger communities. I'm glad to be a county executive in a county like Montgomery County, where we're able to embrace our past, all of it. This is not about feeling guilty, but understanding what happened and learning what we can do to move forward so we can build a better future for everybody. And that is truly one of the nice things about being executive here in Montgomery County. I appreciate that every day. The same day, I also caught a train in Silver Spring for a commemorative ride to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the B&O Railroad line. I used to go on the B&O Railroad to Chicago, and I remember that from the early 1950s, before my parents first took an airplane ride. And it was a remarkable train journey through towns, from here to Chicago. I think it's about an 800-mile trip. And I didn't go that far on Saturday, but I started in Silver Spring, and I rode with about 700 riders who were part of this journey. They had 11 stations in Montgomery County. That journey ended in Brunswick for the people who took the whole trip. I had to get off because I had another thing to go to. But many of our towns along the line developed in conjunction with the railroad because of the role the trains played in advancing commerce, early economic development, and facilitating travel. long before there were cars, trucks, and airplanes. Train travel has been and continues to be an important part of so many of our communities, and it was great to commemorate its importance. Tomorrow, I'll be joining Council President Devin Glass, Maryland Secretary for Veteran Affairs Anthony Woods, members of the Montgomery County delegation to the General Assembly, and the LGBTQ community leaders to commemorate Pride Month. We'll be raising the Progress Pride flag outside the Executive Office Building in Rockville tomorrow at 1 p.m. It'll also be the first opportunity for everyone to see the county's Pride bus wrapped with colors of the Progress flag in honor of Pride Month. I invite everybody to send photos of this to Governor DeSantis. I'm sure he'd be interested. The Progress Pride flag is an inclusive and powerful symbol that celebrates diversity. The flag includes black and brown stripes to represent marginalized LGBTQ plus communities of color, and pink, light blue, and white stripes, which makes up the transgender pride flag. This is the 5th year of flag raising ceremony will help kick off our Pride Month celebrations. There will also be a separate pride flag raising the following day in Silver Spring. Other events include Tacoma Park Pride Day on June 11th, Glen Echo Park Family Day on June 17th, and Rockville Pride June 24th, and Pride in the Plaza on June 25th. And I'm really proud to say that I was part of a Tacoma Park Council that was among the first jurisdiction to recognize before the day of marriages partnerships that were recognized in the city of Tacoma Park in order to help gay partners visit their partners when they're in a hospital, when they were not considered part of the family because there was no legitimate family that two gay people could have. And so when the Tacoma Park recognized these partnerships, they gave people the ability to visit their partners when they were in the hospital. And I was always very proud of that, and glad to see that we've passed on, and gone beyond that in the years that followed. So June is an important month to recognize the LGBTQ fight for equality and an opportunity to celebrate the contributions of our LGBTQ residents. We know that the community continues to deal with discrimination, isolation, threats of violence, and assaults on their freedoms. One of our county's greatest attributes is our commitment to inclusion, fostered by a belief that everyone, no matter their race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or gender identification, can live their lives without bigotry and hatred that they may face elsewhere. Our diversity makes us stronger as a county and as a community. I encourage all residents to participate in Pride Month events. We remain committed to supporting and uplifting the LGBTQ community here. And at the end of the day, folks, we're all human beings after all. It's not too hard to acknowledge that. I'm going to segue now to the community health update. The threat to our community from COVID-19 continues to be low, though not non-existent. Around a year ago, we saw a case rate of more than 400 per 100,000 people. This past week, we registered fewer than 13 cases per 100,000 people. That meant 400 per 100,000 versus 13 cases per 100,000. That's quite a drop. It's great news, and we continue to encourage people to test as needed and get the bivalent vaccines. Those vaccines have really proven to be lifesavers in the community. We all know they have limited time spans, so keep yourself current. It's still around, but we do have effective ways of dealing with it now. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Sean O'Donnell, our Emergency Preparedness Health Manager, for his update on the COVID data before taking your questions. So thank you all very much. And Sean, the show is yours.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. I'll just take you through the surveillance that we have, sharing the reports we get from our state daily. Our case rate is down to 9.24 cases per 100,000 over the past 7 days. We continue to be in low. Looking across the state, we're seeing that across the state as well, as I showed you with the last graph. And we're at one of the lowest, prolonged lowest points since COVID has come on the scene. We continue to look at the CDC reports on the variants. And we just keep seeing the XBB subvariants tick up a little bit each week, but it's not having a profound effect on illness in our county. Looking at individuals who are hospitalized with a COVID diagnosis, we are down a few. We have 2 fewer patients this week than we did last week. Again, we're seeing very limited number of serious illness related to it. And I thought I'd share, as our federal partners and our state partners are updating the different types of data they're collecting, we're able to look at both the ED visits with a COVID diagnosis versus the inpatient patients with a COVID diagnosis. The ED visits, as you would expect, they tend to go up a little bit in advance of the inpatients as people become more ill. But you can see these are both helpful surveillance tools to see what is going on. And again, you can see that both of these metrics are at some of its lowest points since COVID first occurred. Statewide, again, only 90 beds in the state with a COVID diagnosis. Tracking mortality data. Again, we want to emphasize COVID has been a deadly disease over the past year. We fortunately have seen the deaths come down, but it's still many more than we would like to see. If people could stay up to date with their COVID vaccinations, we would hopefully see these numbers almost completely disappear. We want to remind folks that we're still offering COVID boosters, not only at county sites, but of course they're available throughout the county at pharmacies, at private providers. Please, if you're using your insurance, please check with your insurance to make sure that it's covering or that you're going to the right person so that it will cover your vaccination. Most people's insurance will cover the vaccination. You just have to make sure you're going to the right provider, just like any of your other care. Of course, if you come to a county site, there's no charge for vaccination. Wanted to also mention that in addition to COVID, we'll be doing some more Mpox vaccinations at the Pride in the Plaza, and we continue to do them at Dennis Avenue as individuals self-identify that they need a vaccination. For the community, if you got an Mpox vaccination, you only got one, you do need to get a second one. So we're just reminding people, please come out and get that vaccination. And if you think you're at risk, we're happy to give you that vaccination. Those are all the updates I have. Wanted to see if either our director, Dr. James Bridgers, has any additional comments.
Nothing for me, Mr. O'Donnell. Ready for question and answers as needed.
Dr. Sauter? No? Okay. All right, members of the media, we open it up right now for general Q&A portion of the presentation. Please do raise your hand on the chat. I don't see any hands yet. We'll give it a second or two. Any questions for the officials regarding the public health update and or the other topics addressed by the county executive? I guess we don't have any more questions this afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.